Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of Adoptees, which brings together diverse and unique voices from around the world to share their stories. If you like today's episode, remember to give us a like, subscribe, and leave a review. Here's your host, David Shunk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Voice of Adoptees. Tonight, we are joined by Claire. She was adopted from Russia at a young age. Claire, hello. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Claire, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from?
Okay, so I was from Beast, Russia, and I was adopted in 2000 by two loving parents. And I have three other siblings that were also adopted from Russia. One was from the same orphanage as me, and then my two other siblings were from a different orphanage, but I don't remember what name that was. And I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. And yeah, basically it was very small. So it's kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, but not many people know about it. But it's still nice, though. Everyone's really nice and friendly.
Did you ever meet a lot of adoptees growing up?
No, I was basically it was really cool. Like,
well, besides your siblings, of course.
Yeah, well, my siblings, yeah, of course. But the friends that I had, it was like they thought it was so interesting that I was like adopted because it was kind of wasn't rare, but it was just like very unique to be adopted. So they always want to know like where I was from and blah 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 and my story. And it's like I was adopted at 2, so I don't really remember much. But it's like every person that I met and like every teacher is like, oh, like they'd ask like, oh, where are you from or whatever, and like tell us how your summer was or whatever. And it's like, oh, I'm adopted. And so like then they're like have a 5-minute session with me because it's like it was so interesting to them.
Right. So you were adopted at age 2, so you don't have any memories of Russia.
No.
When you were growing up, did you always know that you were adopted?
Yes, I did. Yeah. My mom she actually bought outfits for my siblings and I. I don't know what it's called, but like, is there Russian royalty or something? Because there was like these princess dresses, but they're like Russian or something, or there was like some kind of cultural dress that the Russians would wear back in like very like 200 years ago. Or something like that. I don't know. It seemed like it. But it's like, so she just dressed us up in those for like, because she loves taking photos and stuff like that. But right. I liked it, like, and stuff like that. Yeah, I like knowing that I was adopted rather than like not knowing.
Yeah. Did it ever bother you at any point growing up that you were adopted?
It kind of hit me when I was like in high school because I was trying to figure out like who I was and it's like where I was from and like, my backstory. It's like, I don't know. I didn't know my family and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, like I had anxiety bad in like high school and kind of like, self like insecurity. So I was like, okay, is this like, is this for everyone or is this just basically for adoptees? I don't know. So then I was like, I don't really know. I'm just spacing out.
That's okay. So what was different between your siblings and you when it came to their approach about Russia? You like to talk about it. Did they ever talk about it or no?
Well, so one of my brothers actually likes talking about it, and he also wants to find out his family and his background.
Oh, okay.
But I have a sister and an older brother. Well, they're all older than me. But my youngest older brother wants to know. But my sister doesn't really want to, nor does my older. But the difference is it's like I tried to find my family when I was in high school, but I did the very sketchy thing and I just looked on Facebook and then I want to do Ancestry, but it cost $50 and it's like that was a lot back then for me because I didn't have a job. So I was like, you know what, like if I couldn't find it because I didn't know there was any other kind of resources out there, so I kind of just stopped and halted because I'm like, okay, if they're not on there, I don't know what other resources, but now there is a lot more resources nowadays.
Right. When you wanted to look to find your relatives in high school, what information were you trying to seek? Was it just curiosity, or were you looking for medical history? I mean, like, what were you thinking when you thought, like, hey, I want to try to find these people in Russia?
So it kind of wasn't my idea. It was my best friend's idea.
Oh, so you were pushed.
Because, yeah. So she was like, okay, we're going to look on Facebook, and we're going to try to find your mom or your dad. And then we, like, we'll go from there. But the main thing was medical history because my anxiety was getting worse and worse. And I'm like, okay, I want to know if this is like, my family has the same kind of mental like illness or something like that. So I just wanted to kind of find medical history and just like see if they're still alive or not, like, or if I have any siblings out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. When your best friend told you to search, did she refer to family in Russia as mom and dad?
She said basically my birth parents.
Oh, okay. Because I was
Yeah.
going to say if she said.
And she didn't.
Oh, okay, okay. Because I was going to say.
So there's my birth parents and my adopted parents. Yes.
Right. I was just going to say, how does that make you feel though? If someone referred to your family over in Russia as mom and dad, I mean, do you take offense to that?
No, because it's like I basically, well, with my, adopted parents, basically, it felt like that I was Americanized. So basically, they basically just didn't talk about my birth family at all. It was just like, it was independent for me. So it's like, I chose upon myself to look up my like parents and like stuff like that. And like, I have a book about like all most of my information, but it's kind of fuzzy because Russia's fuzzy like that with medical stuff. So I was looking through it, and my mom's like, "Oh, you can look through it, blah blah blah, anytime." But then my mom, like, I would try to have like a sit down with my mom, and my adopted mom, and she wouldn't have it. So it's just like it was just about like I had to do it upon myself. Just like, okay, well, if I want to figure it out, it's upon me, not my adopted parents. So it's kind of difficult a little bit.
Did you ever get a real reason from your adopted mom or your dad about why they didn't really want to help you search? Was it an insecurity on their behalf, or did they just not really seem interested in it as much? Or
Like I don't really know because it's like it was kind of vague.
have you ever asked?
I have, yeah, but it's very vague, like they just basically just say the same thing. Like, we adopted you to get out, like, to have you have a better life and blah, blah, blah. They didn't really go into detail. It's like, they didn't really want to. But like, even though my mom did take a Russian class in high school and actually went to Russia, that's why she wanted to adopt kids from Russia. But then basically when she adopted, my siblings and I, it just basically became a blur. And it's just like, she just didn't want to talk about it for some reason. I don't know.
Okay. Did you ever? So I know you mentioned that you guys like Russian and clothing to try to familiarize yourself with a little bit of the culture. What age did that stop at?
So those like we only did it like once. We did have a Russian birthday party when I was, I think, 12, 13, like mid teenage years or whatever. Cause it's like, you know what I like, cause I think that was also like maybe the beginning of like, cause I look at my book a lot. I really want to know like if my parents are alive, and I really want to find them. So I told my mom, it's like, you know what, this year we're going to do a Russian birthday party. Cause it's like, you know what, that's my heritage. That's where I came from. I like to celebrate it and stuff like that. So then she made a matrushka. Is that how you pronounce it?
Matroshka.
A matrushka.
Pretty close. Yeah.
A cake. And then she actually had like these little wooden matrushkas that you could paint.
Yeah.
And I'm an awful artist, so I painted the face blue rather than leave it plain. So it was like everyone else had like, the skin color, but I chose mine to be blue. So I guess it was a Smurf, basically, not a Russian, wooden.
Wow. Okay. Growing up, did you ever have any disadvantages, maybe in school or something that you thought was different just because you were adopted? Or you came to a conclusion that hey, I'm like this because I was adopted?
Yeah, so I had like a reading and speech impediment, and everyone else didn't really have. Like, so I think it's called an IEP, basically, or something like that. So
yeah, you had like a special plan in school, pretty much.
Yeah, so I had a special class every year from like first grade to high school, and it was just me and one other person that had it. And so it's like, well, why is everyone else not doing this? Why am I, the outsider? And so then I was thinking back, it's like, well, maybe this is like, because I'm adopted, it's like, maybe I have this kind of, it's not a disability, but it kind of is maybe in some ways.
I'd call it more of a disadvantage.
Yeah. But it was just me. So it just definitely felt weird that it's like, okay, why are my other friends or classmates not doing this class? Why am I the only one? So definitely,
Did you ever get an answer from like the school or even your parents of why you were in those classes?
No. See, like, yeah, because my parents are still very vague about my Russian heritage, so they don't really like talking about it.
So, but I'm trying to understand, when you got put in these classes, was it the school's decision or was it your parents' decision?
My parents.
And they didn't tell you ahead of time?
No, basically they were just like, okay, you can just go in this class. That's going to be like 30 minutes. So you have to like get out of English or history and then go over there and then you can go back.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of adoptees that had, specialized learning plans in school. I had one, same thing pretty much, where, they'd take you out and you'd read with this woman for like 30 minutes and they'd put you back in. And yeah. And I never knew like what the, I was like, okay, why are you interrupting my like class time to go read a book that I felt kind of too old to be reading? Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah.
So as you got older, did you become more interested, or did you stop being interested for a while and want to revisit it down the road, or like kind of walk us through about that?
So it was kind of like always in the back of my head. Like I always wanted to know, but I just didn't know there's resources until
Yeah.
now. So basically, it's like, I wanted to, and my parents were just not an option really. So I basically just like, I'd go on the internet, I'd try like different, like ancestry, whatever. Sometimes like they were free, sometimes they weren't. But it's like I was always interested about my background, but it's like I just didn't have like many people like, to go to. Because like I said, I was like, grew up in a small town, and then there was like another like town that was kind of discreet. So it's like no one really knew any kind of resources. So I was kind of by myself. But I always did think about it. I think basically when high school and then like after high school, I really wanted to find out because like, my anxiety's gotten worse. And like, okay, I really want to find out where I'm from and if my parents are still alive or not.
So did you end up figuring anything out?
So I did about 3 years ago. I did find my family. I don't know how to describe this, but so I got a message from my nephew that out of the blue on, oh, can I say what app that it was on? Or
Yeah. Was it OK or VK?
it was on WhatsApp.
Oh yeah.
It was on WhatsApp. He contacted me and it's like, hey, I'm your nephew. I'm with your sister and with your mother, my grandmother. And so we got to like, it was kind of weird. So I kind of was shocked for a couple days. So I didn't message for a couple days because I'm like, okay, I have a nephew, I have a sister, and I have a mom. Like, my mom's still alive. And then I finally did message back, and I learned about like how his living is. It's not that great because in Besk, it's a very poor part of Russia that they really don't get many food services. So basically, what I learned is that he eats ramen 3 times a day. And like my
And
sister,
where's Besk located?
so it's basically, I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically the big thing. Like basically, go to the middle and then go straight down. I think.
So is it before the mountains or right after? Because I know there's the Ural Mountains out
So
in
it's
like the
not
middle
west.
of Russia.
It's definitely south.
Yeah. So okay. So like down and then toward the middle of Russia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very
so
cold.
like toward Kazakhstan.
Yeah. So it's very cold there, and so and they don't have much supply, so it kind of sucks. And I don't really want to talk about my birth sister because I don't really want to go into detail. But she is still alive, and then my mother is still alive. Now, as far as I know, right now they're doing okay. So.
Did they feel happy to know of your existence?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they're very happy. They wanted me to send pictures of me, and then like I had the big question was medical history.
Yep.
And I did have a translator there with my nephew, and I was like, okay, can I just have any background of like about medical history? Like, is there any illnesses that I like might have? And he basically said, I don't know how to translate that multiple times. And so I'm like, I don't know where to go from there. So it's like I just kept kind of pushing and pushing, and it's like, you know what? I just kind of stopped because I'm like, and I even asked like, well, you can translate, like you could put it in Russian language, and then I could translate it. And it didn't really go through that well, I guess. It didn't really from on his side. So I just kind of stopped.
Yeah. So only information on the mother's side, nothing from the father's side?
No, my father is still unknown.
Okay. Do you want to know at this point, or do you not?
I do, yes. Yeah, I want to see if he's still alive and if he is, like if he's still alive or if like, I don't know. But I'd like to know, yes.
Okay. Have you been back to Russia or no?
No, I have not, but I'd like to.
Okay. What would you like to see in the country?
So I'd like to see actually Moscow, like, the big city. And I would like to go back to my home city, see like a little backstory, and then I'll go back. My adopted parents, they'd actually go to the orphanage, and they had a organization that they'd build playgrounds for orphanages. So they actually built a playground for my orphanage specifically, and then actually go back like every year, basically.
That's really cool.
And so it's like I'd like to go back to like see what they did work on and stuff like that.
Do you remember the name of the organization that they worked for?
So it was called Legacy Bridge.
Legacy Bridge, okay. Because there's probably other adoptees that may actually know the name.
So it's no longer an organization. It stopped about 5-6 years ago.
Yep.
It's no longer, but it's still, the name is still like very around. People know about it.
Okay. So have you ever talked about the findings of your family with any of your current family? Have they asked questions about it? Were they curious themselves or interested?
Not really, no. I did tell my adopted mom, but because like my nephew actually sent pictures of my sister and my mother and him,
Yeah.
and they definitely thought it was very peculiar. So basically, it wasn't really a normal kind of reaction as you'd think. They didn't really want to go into detail.
Hmm.
Like they didn't really ask like, "Oh, how's your sister doing?" How like, "Oh, that's cool that you have a nephew." They didn't really go into detail. They were just like, "Oh, okay." They like just I felt like that they just didn't really care. So kind of also was like a I don't know if I can say this like, but it kind of felt like a backstabbing because it's like you adopted me, but I want to learn about my birth family. Now you don't care that I actually found them.
Yeah. No, that's much more common than you think. And it's sad because you're left being told, like, it's okay to go find out all this information. And then you finally figure it out and you want to go tell, your parents and you're excited. And then
Yeah.
they act like they don't even care. And it's just like, okay, well, why'd you encourage me in the first place,
Yeah. Well, they didn't even encourage. It's like it was upon myself, like I said.
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah, no, they didn't like. They just like, okay, well, here's your book of your information. You can do what you will. They didn't really care what I did with it.
Okay. I know you mentioned that besides your siblings, did you ever run into any maybe adopted kids from China or different countries or foster care or any other, or it's really just you and your siblings?
It was just really me. Yeah, it was just my siblings and I were like, the unique people that were adopted. Everyone else was like, born here. So it was definitely still felt like an outsider.
Wow. You mentioned that you had a birthday party and that your parents kind of celebrated you and your siblings being Russian like once or twice maybe. Did they ever did you ever experience the food at all or
No, well, we did go to, so there was a Russian candy store
Yep.
in New Hampshire that we would go every summer. So I'd grab these like little candies. They were like kind of like, the Jolly Rancher gummies, but they like Russian ones or something like that. I remember because it was like the same kind of wrapper.
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
always get those. But other than that, really not much else now.
Okay. If you were to find your biological father, have you thought about what you'd want to say to him?
Well, basically, it feels like that he abandoned my mother because he wasn't in the picture. So it's like, okay, what's your story? Why is my mother, alone with her only, like, well, with the daughter that's there and then the nephew? So it's like, I just want to know why you left and your backstory, basically.
Right.
So,
So if your family, I know you said you already wanted to return and you'd want to go to Bisk. Would you want to
yeah.
see your biological family when you're in Bisk?
So that's kind of like a rough patch for me because it's like I kind of stopped with the conversations with my nephew a little bit ago because it was just hard to translate my like, wording to his. So it kind of just at a stop. So I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling is Bisk a very well known place or is it a small remote village or
It's most likely small and it's very cold. So
okay, so I
it's
feel like if you did take a trip back and brought like a translator or a guide with you, I feel like the news would spread pretty quickly. A girl from America is visiting, and I feel your
yeah.
family would probably get news of that and try to come find you and meet you. And I was just curious what you would want to say to them if you saw them in person.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So when do you want to go back to Russia? How soon?
Well, there's a thing going on right now.
Well, yeah. I
So
mean, like beside, yeah.
um
After that,
so
like,
probably if it does end, hopefully it does, probably within maybe like the next 10 years or so.
yep.
So
Have you ever wanted to learn the language?
kind of, but it's very difficult. So because I do still like have a still like a speech impediment, so it's kind of still hard to speak some of the words.
Yeah.
So, but like I can like do like hi and bye, but that's really it. So,
Mm,
um, I want to know how to say a full sentence.
yeah. Did you ever take any other foreign languages in school?
I took Spanish.
Oh, okay. Well, you do.
Want to take French, but apparently because I have the speech impediment and like whatever, basically it's like, well, that wouldn't be right for you, so we're gonna stick with you with like Spanish. And I'm like, but because I wanted to because I wanted to go to France, and I actually did, and I want to at least learn the language so then I could actually not feel like an American there. Because they judge Americans over there. So it's like I'd like to learn the language, but I just didn't get the chance.
Yeah. So when it comes to adoption, you hear a lot of different sides of
Mhm.
adoption, especially positive ones, because the media likes to focus on the success stories, of course. It sells better. That's the truth. But when you have these people who are negative about it, what's your first reaction?
They think that they just think that it's like, so bad about like being adopted and whatnot because you're just so different and you weren't born in America, because apparently like America's like, the best place on earth, which, in some circumstances it is. But people just are like frowned upon in other countries because they have heard different things. So I just basically, sometimes my first reaction is kind of ignore them because I don't like negative kind of environments. But then also it's like I'll tell them my side, like, well, don't really think that way. I'm like, this is the way that like, I think, so maybe you should think this way.
And what do you say toward the really negative experiences people had that were from orphanages that came into adoptive families and experienced like traumatic events such as abuse, and rape, and neglect, and terrible things like that, who really do say, if and are dreaming to basically get away from where they're adopted from, and they want to return to Russia because maybe they even felt safer over there.
So that's a difficult like situation to go upon because it's like I haven't experienced that myself. But what I'd say is just like that was a horrible time. But you were where you were meant to be. Basically, like when you're adopted, like when you come to America, not stay in Russia, because like if you had that circumstance, it definitely was very traumatizing, and you want to get out of it. But if people do say that they want to go back to it, then it's like they don't really want to relive it, but they want to go back to where they came from. And sometimes, like their memories will come back, and that is tough. But sometimes, like going with someone and having some comfort, realizing it's like that was the past. I don't really know how to go on it, because it's a really tough subject.
Yeah, no, there's no good answer. I was just curious what your opinion.
There's no right way or wrong way, but it's just like you just need someone there just to talk to and talk through if you're having some tough times, basically.
Okay. No, that's fine. I mean, that was just an opinion question anyway. There's no right or wrong answer because no one has a right answer for it. I mean, like I said, adoption is so complicated that there's a lack of understanding in society about it. That's why we have adoptees are the ones sharing these stories. So you hear the good and the bad. That's what we're doing. Have you ever kind of thought on a bigger picture why you were adopted? Or do you believe in a higher power that made it happen?
Well, I'm religious, so I do believe in God. So, but I do believe there was a reason for me being adopted. That there was like maybe I do have a better life like here than I would have back there, because I do hear stories that people did have tough situations and tough lives, and they wanted to get out, but sometimes they just don't have parents that adopted them. So it is really hard. But I do believe that there is always a reason, basically, of why I was adopted and stuff like that.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about adopting your own children?
Yeah. I don't really know how the situation is like with adopting from Russia, because I am technically a Russian citizen still. But with like nowadays, I don't know if that's still possible. But I would still like to adopt.
I heard there's some loophole. At least that's what the rumor is, that because Russian citizens live abroad, they can use that as an excuse to kind of get around the ban, even if they have another nationality. But would you specifically choose Russia, or would you be open to other countries?
I'd be open to other countries, yes, but I'd start with Russia though first, because that's where I came from. So I'd like to not like leave a legacy, but I'd like to keep on the story basically, because that's what my adopted parents did. So I'd like to keep going with it.
So if you adopted someone from Russia and they wanted to know about their history and family one day, and go back to the roots, kind of like how you did growing up, what would your response be to your own child?
Yeah, I'd be open to it. I'd be like, if you're open to finding your family, I'd be like, okay, well, we'll sit down. There's so many resources, like, we'll like go back to like, why I adopted you, and like, your kind of story. And then I'd basically like, okay, well, if you want to find your parents, this is the resource that we can go to and stuff like that. Because there's so many out there that, it's not very hard anymore.
Right.
But I'm very open to having their story being told and having their birth family be found for them.
Do you believe that there's anything wrong with being adopted?
I don't think so, no. It's definitely different, but it's definitely unique, because you definitely have a different story than everyone else. Everyone has a story, but being adopted definitely is a great story because you're from a different country. So people are really interested in that.
Were you ever bullied for being adopted?
No.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, were you kind of quiet about it as a child, or did you? I mean, it sounded like you only told your close friends. Did you ever like publicly speak about it to a larger group, or?
What do you mean publicly?
Like, maybe did a class project on Russia because it was special to you because you came from there or something.
No, we didn't have a project like that. I wish we did, because I would definitely do it.
Okay.
But no, we did not.
Well, I'm curious about a little bit of like science behind the adoption. In school, for example, we learn about like genetics and traits and how certain things are, like your smile is a certain way because of your mother, or your father had brown eyes, so you're going to have the dominant trait, right?
Yeah.
When you were taught
Yeah.
any of that in school, did you participate in those exercises, or did you just go off of what your adoptive parents look like and lie, or how did you go about doing those types of assignments?
So my adoptive parents, like my dad has blue eyes and my mom has green eyes and I have brown. So it's not, I don't think it's possible. So I would go back to my heritage and like, okay, my mom might have had brown eyes, so I have brown eyes.
Oh, so you had that information that specifically said the eye color and
Yes, in my book, it actually says brown eyes, blonde hair, how tall she was. So I'm short and she was short. She's only 5'1" and I'm 5'2". So, it's very similar.
yeah. Okay, so that's interesting to know. So when you think of adoption, if you just hear someone talking about it on the street, if what's your first initial reaction to it?
It's pretty like interesting because like they're trying to tell their story. So maybe like I would maybe join in. It's like, oh, I was adopted too. Like I'm going to tell you my story and stuff like that. I'm very open to like telling my story in some ways.
Have you ever thought about writing a book about your story?
I'm not a good writer, so no. But if I was, I would probably. Yeah, but I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah. Do you believe that you said that you briefly did you talk to your biological mother at all or no?
No, it's just through my nephew.
Okay. Do you know if she wanted to talk to you?
I don't remember. No, no, it's just mostly my nephew that talked. Yeah, it was mostly I think my sister and my nephew. That was it. Yeah.
And you haven't communicated with them for a while?
No, no, it kind of ended.
Okay. Are you active at all in terms of Russian social networking sites or keeping up to date with like news, what's happening over there?
So I do have a Facebook thing that I follow, Russians of New Hampshire. So I get to learn about like, people talk about their story or like where they're from and stuff like that. And then I also follow like Russian Adoptees group on Facebook as well. So I keep up to date with that.
And do you ever read some of the stories that are posted about people's experiences? And do you ever kind of wish you had a different experience than the one you have now?
Like I do think about it, but it's like I think that, everything happens for a reason. So I think my situation was supposed to happen the way it was.
Yeah. So your message overall would be more positivity than negative, I assume.
Yeah. Like everyone like has like, there's always like, the bad sides and the good sides. But sometimes it's hard to say this, but sometimes you have to go through the bad to get to the good.
If there was one thing you could change about your adoption journey so far or your adoption story, I know people don't like to dwell on the past, but if there was something that you think could have been done differently, what do you think that would be?
I think I'd want my adopted parents to be more open about my background and actually want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because they're very vague and not really open. So it's like I'd actually want to like, know more answers rather than just like, okay, you were cute, that's it. It's like, yeah, I was a cute baby, but it's like, I want to know why you adopted me rather than like, well, we wanted cute, like, they did want 6 kids, but they stopped at 4. So I don't know that reason either.
Yeah.
But I would want them to be more open because it's like, it's just kind of felt like that I was all by myself and I just wanted someone else to be there along the journey.
Which is a strange feeling to say that you felt all by yourself, considering you had 3 other Russian adoptees living in the same house as you.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of odd about it.
Because they weren't really open about it either.
Do you know why they were never open about it?
Their view of it is that they were neglected. So they see Russia as a bad, kind of thing. So it's like, like, well, they neglected us. So I'm not going to like, acknowledge that I was born there, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, okay, well, if you don't agree with it, then I basically did feel alone because I'm like, well, if you're not going to be positive about it, how am I going to turn you to be positive about it?
That makes sense. When did you start to get more positive feedback about your adoption journey? Like what age would you say someone started to listen to you, I guess?
Probably when I like, started to find like my family like a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So I know you talk about how your siblings just think that they were neglected, right? At any point growing up, did you actually try to talk to them, like a deep conversation at all about Russia? Like bring it up, or did you just pretty much avoid it?
I kind of avoided it, yeah, because I just didn't want to talk about it either. Because basically, how my adopted parents, like basically they Americanized us, as you'd say. So it's like, basically our Russian heritage is like, no longer really, I don't know what the word is, but so it's just like, it was just very hard.
Do you wish that maybe at least one of your siblings would have been more into it, so at least you could have someone, I guess, talking about it growing up?
The idea of one of the brothers likes talking about it, but he's very confused about it. So it's like all we talk about is like, our mental illness is basically the same. We both have anxiety, we both had depression. So, but we don't really go into detail about it because he doesn't go
Right.
like, so we, like my siblings and I have like the 4 books about all our information. I was the only one that actually took it out, like, every couple months. My siblings wouldn't really look at it at all. So
Do you think they ever will?
I don't think so. No, that's kind of sad.
Does it? Yeah, I was going to say, does it ever hurt you or bother you?
It kind of does because, like I said, it's like I do feel alone because I'm like, in grade school, I was like felt like that was the only adopted person throughout basically school years and stuff like that. So I just felt really weird. So I do feel hurt because I'm like I want someone else to be, the same kind of situation and actually understand what I'm going through rather than just brush it off.
Have you ever considered, or have you ever at one point saw a counselor specifically for like adoption or
No.
adoption trauma? Would you ever consider it, or do you think you need it?
So I did go through therapy in high school,
Oh, okay.
but it wasn't for Russia like only.
Okay.
But I did talk about like, I was born from Russia, I do have these things and stuff like that. But it was only a 1 session thing. It wasn't continuing.
Okay.
I felt like I was being ignored a lot because I was just like, okay, now I'm back at square one. I'm all by myself again.
Would you feel right now to this day, do you still feel alone, or because of all these resources now, you feel not as alone anymore?
I feel like that there's like, now there's like a group of people that I can understand, like they're trying to find the same answers that I am. So it's like, now I don't feel as alone. So it feels good because it's like I read their stories and so I can kind of relate in some ways. Because it would like, some people's like they can never find their families and some of them they can, but everyone gets a different reaction.
Right.
So.
Right. So I like to ask everyone at the end of our episode if you could leave a piece of advice or words of wisdom to someone who's going to listen to this episode, what message would you want to try to get across?
I'd say you're not alone. There's so many resources out there. So if you have like just share your story, and people will reach out and stuff like that. You're not alone because it's like it does take. I was alone for a long time until I found the resources, and now it's like I've connected with some people and stuff like that. I don't know how to like add on to that.
So your message of just there's someone out there to talk to if they need it. Okay. Well, Claire, it's been a pleasure this evening speaking to you. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and opening up. If you would like to ever come back, you are more than welcome to. If you have any updates about your family, let us know. And again, thank you so much. And you were great to have on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That was Claire from New Hampshire, another Russian adoptee, joining us tonight on Voice of Adoptees podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, Google, and many others, including our website, voiceofadoptees.com. If you're adopted or know someone who wants to share your story, come on, find us online and book a time, and we'd be happy to speak with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great evening or a great day, and we will see you next episode. Voice of Adoptees. Who am I?
Thanks for listening to Voice of Adoptees. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review. See you next time.